What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Dripping Creativity Podcast. I am your host, Chris Corvan, and today's guest has a story to tell from the edge. Sam Harding, former U.S. Army paratrooper, current law enforcement officer, and indie author. Sam's action-packed experience from the skies over... Oh, God. How do you pronounce that? Vicenza?
Vicenza. Yeah, it's northern Italy between Venice and Verona.
You know, so. It's another time where I write it down without actually saying it out loud or realizing how to pronounce it properly. It happens all the time. From the skies over there to the rugged landscapes of Northeastern Washington, fueled the gripping tales in his trilogy. Sam, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. Apparently, I should have reread this one. Man, it's been one hell of a day. It's just been nonstop. All right.
Oh, yeah. Sounds like it.
We are going to jump right into this today. So you have gone from paratrooper to author. What's kind of the story that led you from one to the other?
Being an author was kind of something I always wanted to do. I mean, I always wanted to join the Army too. That was kind of the two things that I knew I wanted to do as a kid growing up, is write books and be in the military. Maybe a weird combo, especially for a kid to want to do that. But I started writing like stories since I was probably 8 or 9 years old. I'm a big nerd. I was such a Batman fan as a kid, so I'd always write like Batman stories or make my own graphic novels and stuff like that. And so it was just always something I knew I wanted to do. But again, I wanted to join the military, so I joined the military not long after high school. And even when I was there, I knew I still wanted to write. And so I wrote some like really terrible short stories and stuff like that while I was in. But I didn't really start getting serious about it until after I got out.
So with the short stories that you were kind of writing over there, was it more out of escapism, or was it more just kind of based in what you were experiencing?
A little bit of both. It's a stressful environment to be in, especially as a junior enlisted sometimes. I mean, a lot of hazing and stuff like that. So it was therapeutic for me to kind of create my own world and dive into that when I was there. Like at nighttime, I'd be in the barracks and have a oh shit kind of day maybe. And not even like deployment wise, but just like I said, as the new guy, it's tough. I mean, you go there thinking you're going to be the most badass dude on the face of the planet, and before you know it, you're doing push-ups because you didn't change a light bulb the right way. You know, I mean, that's just how it is. And it was just a good escape for me to just to kind of get away from it all.
Is that kind of something like with those short stories that you said were shitty, but I'm guessing there's something good in there that you're thinking of, kind of going into later on that you can kind of craft into maybe another novel or something like that?
Probably not. I pretty much shit-canned all of those. They were fun while they lasted, but I've kind of moved on from a lot of that stuff, and because they were very military centered, because that was all I knew at the time, and I've kind of branched out to different interests that, in my opinion, are more fun to write about. So yeah, that's just, I don't think I'll go back to them.
You know what? Nothing wrong with that shit at all. How do you kind of capture the high stakes action in your writing without losing the readers who might not know the lingo or experience?
It's kind of a tricky thing, because on one part, you don't want to fill it full of lingo and jargon that people don't understand, but then you don't want to saturate it with explanations and make your novel part glossary at the same time. So it's kind of a fine line. I don't know if I've walked that line the correct way or not. I've done my best to try and kind of help not overuse lingo that people wouldn't understand. And if I do, I try to parenthesize the actual meaning afterwards. But again, you can get too far with that, because then it becomes like I said, a glossary type of thing, and you don't want to oversaturate it with that. So I try to be really careful. So hopefully I'm careful enough.
So what is your kind of go-to genre when it comes to writing stuff?
So the trilogy I wrote, I call it the Micah Donovan trilogy. That's the name of the main character. He's a private detective. So it's mystery thrillers is what they are. And they take place in a fictional county in Northeast Washington, very akin to where I live. So that I got really attracted to that, especially when I went into law enforcement, because it kind of opened my eyes to what really goes on at home, like in the real world. And it's stuff that I didn't even think was a thing until I experienced it firsthand. And so it really opened the door to a lot of stories. And I haven't wrote about anybody I know specifically, but I definitely take inspiration from stuff I have seen personally and stuff that my friends have seen personally. So it just it wasn't an easy transition, but it was I don't know, not easy, but it just seemed like the right kind of transition to make from what I was doing before to doing this. It's just, there's so much weird stuff in the actual world that I didn't need to, do the military fiction route for that. So
yeah, it's there's a lot of weird shit out there.
Yeah.
So kind of talking about the law enforcement side there. Bringing that kind of into your storytelling and all of that stuff, how do you kind of mix it in properly without burning yourself out on the whole thing of the fact that it's what you do and it's now what you're writing about?
So that's a really good question, because the answer is I did burn myself out on it. It got to where I would work all night, usually all night. I've been on night shift for most of my time, and then write about a lot more exaggerated version of events of stuff I've seen in real life, but it's still it's like, oh, I already just wrote police reports at work. Like, now I'm doing another case that I made up in my head. So, which is why the book I'm working on now, I'm actually in edits right now. It's just about done. It'll probably be out in the middle of December. It is a mystery, but it's more centered on the horror genre. Something completely different. I got to make a lot of weird stuff up, weird as in not what you'll find in the real world stuff. And it was almost therapeutic to make that change in genre. I mean, there's still police stuff, there's still a mystery involved, but just getting to make some just crazy stuff up was definitely helped with that. So
preaching to the choir on that one, man. That's like my bread and butter right there. Okay, before we jump into the gray, let's actually go back to the Micah, yep. The Micah Donovan trilogy there. What kind of originally started the premise of the story, and how did you kind of evolve into a trilogy?
So the first book is called The Man on Little Sweden. And Little Sweden is actually a real name of a road that I used to live on when I first met my wife. And for some reason, I always thought The Man on Little Sweden would be a good title for a book. So I had the title long before I had the story. There was just something about that, something almost ominous about it. And I don't even know how to tell you why it was ominous, just in my mind it was. And so there's a lake near that road. And I remember driving past it, and it was winter, and I was looking at all the snow, all the ice and stuff like that. And there was a kind of, it's almost like just a life in of itself out there that I wanted to write about, just the environment. And I knew I could do something dark and, yeah, I guess just kind of dark and messed up in a place like that, because it's kind of a boring area crime wise where I used to live. But I'm like, well, what if it wasn't? Like, what if bad stuff was really happening? And that's what kind of gave me that idea. And I just got into law enforcement at that time, and I just started kind of picking from cases and stuff that I knew about, whether it be local cases or international stuff, to some of the weirdest stuff I could find, and just kind of blended stuff together. And that's what came up, or that's where I came up with it.
And then, so the transition from the first book there, at what point were you like, no, this needs to be a trilogy?
So I actually was thinking about it being a whole series. Because I grew up reading series, or even now I read series. I'm a big Brad Thor guy, Mark Rainey. I'm reading Jack Carr's newest book right now. So most of what I read has come from a series. Very few times does it not. Like my Stephen King stuff, I mean, he doesn't really write series, just standalone mostly.
I'd call The Dark Tower a series.
Well, okay, with the exception of The Dark Tower, right? And how good was that? But, right. So, like I said, I wanted it to be kind of a series, but as we said before, I did get burnt out with it between my job and then writing about similar stuff to what I do. And that's when I'm like, you know what? I found a good place to wrap it up. I ended the third one in a way where I could stop it if I wanted to, or maybe in the future, if I so chose, continue on with another one. We'll see. And then I moved on to something different. I kind of changed my mind halfway through. So...
You know what? That's kind of how it always goes too. It's like, yeah, let's change some shit. All right. So you're pulling from different various things like that, and then the ultimate thing, which I'm a huge fan of, which is the what if some shit happens in this area, because that's always the best place to pull from. You're compiling it all there. Let's kind of talk about the main character there and how you were able to kind of take all these various parts that you've researched and all that and put it into your narrative story flow.
So you're asking about like where I came up with the main character?
Yeah, let's kind of start there, and then how you kind of pieced the world around him.
So the main character, I think a lot of authors who say they don't mold their characters after themselves, at least some of them, are not telling the truth. There's a lot of me in this guy. Physically, we even look somewhat similar. The biggest difference with him, though, is a lot of books, you have this action hero who is almost perfect, you know, and Lee Child did that deliberately with Jack Reacher. I want this big hulking man who's just physically perfect in every way, right? And I didn't want to do that. I wanted a guy that had physical and mental limitations. So in this case, it's severe PTSD and a missing leg. So he has a prosthetic leg. And I just didn't want him to be he's not a Rambo. He's not a Jack Reacher. And that's one thing I liked about Jeffrey Deaver's Lincoln Rhyme books too, because Lincoln Rhyme is not a physical guy at all. I don't want to spoil it for those who haven't read his books, but so that's kind of where that came out of it. Like I said, and to be completely honest, if I have a guy look like me and he's this badass action hero, then how pretentious is that? I got to make him somewhat, you know. So that's where that came out of it. So then I gave him the backstory, which again gave him PTSD. He loses his family to this killer and ends up losing his job from it, and he gets back into it. And so I like I said, I wanted a broken person to kind of try and bring back from the brink of where he was at. And then going back to the environment, the Little Sweden area, and I talked about, you know, looking at the pond with the lake in the wintertime and stuff like that. The setting kind of became the main character more than the main character became the main character. And so it was actually kind of easy for me to write him, because it was a matter of just saying, what would a guy with this mental state do in a place like this? And instead of forming the place around him, I formed him around the place, if that makes sense.
It does completely. Now when it came to the actual arc of the story there, the antagonists, whoever they may be, is that something that you kind of already had planned out, or is that something you developed specifically kind of around the main character and the environment?
I had it planned out like just prior to writing it. I'm not much of an outliner. I was very seat in my pants when I did it. But I definitely wanted the antagonist to, because it's a whodunit too, though, so you don't know exactly how it all falls in until the end. Some people predicted it, some people did not. But I wanted it to be a surprise, and one that people hopefully wouldn't expect. But the one antagonist who is not a secret at all, he's a guy named David, and he's I don't even know how to describe him. He's a religious fanatic, I'll put it that way. Very misinterprets his scripture to the point where he's very, very Old Testament type. And his methods are very much focused on that, and appeasing what he believes God's will is, which that's his insane tick right there. And I always kind of wanted to write a guy like that. So that's, yeah.
When writing such a character like that, did you do a lot of research kind of going into it to figure out how to piece it together? And did you have either an easy or a difficult time kind of getting into the mindset?
So David was actually kind of easy. And that is kind of where my job comes into it. I've dealt with a lot of people with very bad mental health issues, and a lot of them, especially the super violent ones. One in particular he was a murderer, and I won't go too deep into it because if people from the community hear this, I don't want to bring up those memories, but he was a murderer, and he was super fixated on religion. I mean, to the point where he had a whole cross tattooed on his chest and the whole 9 yards. Not a lot of people scare me. This kid came pretty close. And I just remember the nothingness in his eyes. And he would, with that nothingness in his eyes, he would preach this twisted version of his understanding of the gospel. And I'm like, that right there is evil personified. And I wanted to capture that. And I hopefully I did with David. A lot of people say I did. So hopefully I did.
So I know with a lot of writers that have not experienced those things, but write about them, they are very kind of cavalier when it comes to the descriptions and all of that stuff. Having actually experienced it and that type of thing, did you find yourself watering down what you said or second guessing what things you were kind of putting in that did relate more to real life events?
His personality is pretty identical to the specific individual I'm thinking of. I did add my own, flair to it and stuff like that, just to fit for the narrative's sake. The actions that this person took in real life versus the actions this character took in the book are different. They're different on specifics, but the attitude is similar. I mean, because in real life, this person didn't kill multiple people; it was just one. In the book, he's a serial killer, so that's different. I don't know if most people would read my character and be like, "Oh, he just modeled him off of this guy exactly." But I know I did, and people I've worked with know I did. But I didn't make it so obvious as to hopefully not offend people locally who would read it, if that makes sense.
Definitely something you want to kind of tread a little bit lightly when it comes to that type of thing, for sure. Let's actually talk about people you work with and all that. Like, do they know you're a writer? Have you given them your stuff? Like, what's the reaction?
Yeah, so pretty much all of them know I'm a writer. Some of them are really into knowing that. They're book junkies just like I am. A couple of them I actually send my work to before I send it out, and they try and help me with edits or, hey, you screwed this up because you said this before, now you're saying this. They're really good about that. And I mentioned some of them in the acknowledgement sections of the book, because without them, I mean, I'd probably have way more mistakes than I already do, because it's so hard to catch everything, especially as an indie author. So yeah, a lot of people know. It's funny too, because I get asked, like, right after I release a book, "Oh, when's your next one? It's like, I don't know. Like, it just depends. But no, it's really cool. I have really good friends out here, and they're my biggest supporters. Without them, I might have not even done it. After the first one, I might not even have done a second one. But after I saw their reaction and their support, it's like, okay, I'm gonna keep doing this. Like, this is awesome. Having that kind of local inner circle along with the online inner circle is very helpful when it comes to those days you just want to give up. That's for sure. Okay, so we've talked about the first book of the trilogy there. Is it the same antagonist all the way through, or is each book kind of its own story? Each book can be read as a standalone if you want it to. I reference the previous ones in them, but they're mostly standalones on their own, so it's a different antagonist on each one.
Perfect. Did you ever read Dean Koontz' Odd Thomas?
I haven't.
You should. Okay. Definitely. It's a fantastic character that has... he can't go out in the sunlight because of a genetic condition, and so the entire story happens at night, and it's amazing. It's actually an extremely good series. I've only read 3 of them, but I think there's like way more at this point. It's kind
What's
of
it called?
Odd Thomas is the actual character, but the series start one. You know what? We have the ability to do this here. I think the first one is Odd Thomas, but let me just make sure.
Odd Thomas, okay.
Yeah. Odd Thomas, which is old. What is the correct order? Wow, there's so many. So yeah, it starts with Odd Thomas, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books in total. And all of them have the word odd in it. But yeah, no, it's a fantastic series. Definitely check out that one. I really liked it.
Okay.
It has a nice kind of mystery vibe to it as well. And that's just kind of my side tangent for this thing. All right, let's kind of go into The Gray now. Talk to me about your upcoming book and what is it all about?
So The Gray, like I said, is kind of a deviation from the first three. It's got a more horror element. So essentially, it takes place in the 1980s. It's a Vietnam vet who goes to a small island town off of Western Washington. It's a fictional town called Blackstone. It's located in the Sound. And basically his sole mission for his visit there is to deliver a letter to the chief of police. And the letter is from the chief of police's brother who died in Vietnam. And it's basically a death note to his brother. Except when he gets there, like all thrillers, everything falls apart. He finds out there's a cult on the island that has been committing murders for the past year. And the police department, being understaffed, understands his skill sets from Vietnam and everything, and asks his help to try and figure out what's going on with this cult. And being a horror, it's not exactly as one might think. He starts to realize that this cult is actually under the influence of something within the island, something dark that's been there for a long time. And so there's your general premise. And it's funny, man, I can write a 700+ page book, right? But describing what it's about is so stinking hard, and I don't know why.
It's one of those things that I've talked to this with a lot of authors. There is figuring out a solid elevator pitch for a book is one of the hardest things you will ever write.
Right.
Just because it's like, I want to tell you everything, but I want to tell you nothing. But
that's
I want
the
you
thing.
to buy
To be
it.
careful. Right. That little summary on the back of the book was the hardest part to write for me.
I have helped many an author out with theirs, where it's kind of like, all right, this is good. Let me just kind of, put my flourish on it. And, because it like marketing even, it's a lot easier to sell someone else than it is to sell yourself is
Right.
really what a lot of people find out there. Because again, it's like, you don't want to be like all braggy and shit, but at the same time you kind of need to be braggy, and it's hard to do for a lot of people. So
It is that. So that's been the hardest part about marketing. It's like, I don't like talking about myself. I never have. And so having to do that without trying to look like a douchebag has been such a tricky thing for me. But so I'm just trying to force myself to do it, like it is what it is.
You gotta run before you crawl in some cases. And marketing, especially as an indie author, is just one of those things where it's the only way to get the word out there. It sucks, but you gotta do it. All right. So when it comes to kind of the public perspective on action, suspense, law enforcement, and the military there, what, from your unique perspective, do you think are kind of the most understood parts of military and law enforcement life when it comes to fiction?
The most understood parts?
Misunderstood. What do you think people kind of don't understand the differences between kind of fictional military and law enforcement and real life?
Okay, that's actually an easy one. The military and law enforcement is a very boring job at times. So you watch these dramas on TV, right? I mean, SEAL Team, the military thing, or what's a good cop one, Chicago PD or something, and it's just action packed all the way through. It's not real life. I mean, whether you're on the most high-speed military unit or the busiest police department in the world, like, you are going to have so much time just sitting there doing nothing, waiting for something to happen. And I think people think it's a lot more action-packed than it is. Now, don't get me wrong. When there is action, there is action. When you're busy, you are busy. But it's probably maybe 20% busy and then a lot of downtime in between.
And paperwork on top of that.
Oh yeah, don't even get me started on that. There's so much paperwork, but
so much paperwork.
Yeah.
Okay, so now as we kind of gear up to go into the rapid fire here, let's talk about jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And it's something that you are currently learning?
Yes. Yep.
How is that going? What kind of made you want to get into doing that one?
Well, a lot of it is for my job. So I'm not going to get too deep into politics, because we all know how there's a national perception on policing and a very political opinion on it, right? One of the biggest issues is excessive force stuff, right? And so the thing about jiu-jitsu and martial arts is a lot of people think that cops do that as an excuse to thump on somebody, but the reality for that stuff is it actually makes a safer environment for both the officer and the person that they are dealing with. What you see a lot of times with excessive force stuff is undertrained police officers wailing on somebody because they don't know what they're doing versus somebody that knows what they're doing and can control the situation a lot better with the least amount of necessary force needed to solve something. So that's what ultimately got me into it. Is A, I wanted to go home at the end of the day and not, lose my life on the streets, and B, because I wanted to be able to do something as efficient as possible. And so that's why I did it. And I've been doing it for about 2 years now. My wife does it with me. She's not in law enforcement, but she wanted to get into it. And it's just been a great experience.
I've always wanted to learn jiu-jitsu myself. I mean, come on, that's some good shit there.
It is. I wish more people would do it, not just cops, because it is probably the most humbling thing you can do. I mean, I've been a weightlifter. I'm a strong guy. I thought I was super capable, and then you show up day one and you get folded in your own clothes, by a 16-year-old, and it's like, holy crap, like what just happened? So I recommend everyone do it and learn it.
So with that type of training and all of that stuff going into your stories there, is that something you kind of work into the actual premise of how you're building your characters and handle situations?
So the first one, not so much, because I hadn't really gotten into jiu-jitsu in the first book. The second one, I think I put some into it, but I definitely bring it out in the third book. There's a fight scene in the third one, and I definitely kind of get nerdy with jiu-jitsu a little bit on that. So yeah, I definitely weave it in. I don't think I did so much in the newest one, just because the nature of the bad guys are different than most human beings. So, but yeah, I have weaved it in.
Excellent. All right. So the final question for the main segment here, between dogs, cats, family life, and a high stakes job there, how do you kind of find the time to fit in your writing? Like, do you have any habits that you got to do? What's your routine like? Talk to me, man.
Yeah. So it's basically whenever I have a day off, it's the first thing I'm going to do that day. Like whether I want to or not, whether it's one chapter, one scene, one sentence, whatever, I'm going to do it. And once I stuck to that, that seemed to propel me through my last one pretty good, just forcing myself to do it. And it's kind of like Stephen King kind of described writing as a train just taking off from the station. It just picks up speed after a while, and that's very true. You just start writing and it starts off slow, but eventually things start coming, and starts coming, and then you're off to the races after that. So the trick is just to actually sit your butt down and do it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that one. All right, we're going to jump into some rapid fire questions now. Take a drink, prepare yourself.
All right, let's do it.
This is going to be so intense. Not really. It's fine. Take your time.
Okay.
We're going to start off nice and easy here. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
My cat is meowing again. Good choice. What is a mundane skill that you are actually really proud of?
Oh man, a mundane skill I'm really proud of. Holy cow.
Man, I go hard on these, I'm telling you.
A mundane skill I'm really proud of.
Something that, is just kind of like an everyday thing that you didn't realize you're actually really proud of. It's hard to think of that shit. I know.
It is. Might have to come back to me on that
one. No worries. All right. Would you rather face off against a horror movie villain or a cage fighter?
Cage fighter.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I could take out a couple of villains. I don't know.
Well, I guess it depends on a horror movie villain, because
also true.
Yeah, cage fighter hopefully just puts me to sleep real quick before, horror villains typically don't do that. So
I don't know. Either way, my ass is probably gonna be dead. All right. If you could eat one meal for one meal you could eat for dinner forever.
Sushi.
Really?
Yeah, I'm a sushi fan.
Wow, I never got into sushi. My dad loved it.
There's a place in Spokane that man, they got really good sushi. It's called The Wave. And I could eat there every day. I just can't afford to.
That is always a problem there. Best advice you would give to your dogs if they could understand.
Best advice. Well, never give up is good for a human, but never tell your dog that.
Yeah. Oh.
Best advice. Patience is key.
That's a good one. Most surprising thing you learned in the military?
Most surprising thing I learned in the military. How eclectic it is. I didn't realize how many walks of life that I would be working with. Just I mean, I worked with people that had master's degrees and worked with people that didn't even finish high school. It's just, and I mean, people from the city, people from, you know, the farms of Kansas, like, it's just, everyone's got such a different backstory. And I for some reason didn't expect that, but that was probably the biggest one.
I think that's just because, like, the general media that everyone is kind of just inundated with all the time is like, there's just a specific type of person that goes into the military.
Right.
And yeah, no, people go for all different reasons. It's,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of that up here in Canada, that's for sure. The military experience is a lot different. All right, what is your current guilty pleasure movie, TV show, or book?
Current guilty pleasure movie, TV show, or book.
What don't you want people to know that you're into?
I don't know if it's a guilty pleasure, but I freaking love South Park.
You know what? I would classify that as a guilty pleasure. I mean,
okay.
You know, yeah, definitely. I would.
Yeah.
Shit, that's been on for so long. Oh,
I know it, but they just do not care. I mean, they say whatever, and I love it. So
for all the bumps and bruises that it has, it is a show that knows how to tackle topics and is not afraid to do it. And you gotta give them kudos for that shit. That's for sure.
Well, this might be another one. It's a Canadian show, Letterkenny, and I'm a huge Letterkenny.
Everybody should be a Letterkenny fan. I agree. I don't give a shit.
I agree.
All right. Have we thought of a mundane skill yet?
Please. Mundane skill.
Are you really good at cooking, cleaning?
No, I'm not a good cook or a good cleaner. My wife will tell you that.
Then we'll leave that one up for the next time you're here. It'll be the first question I'm going to ask you, so you best be thinking about that shit.
I'll think on it. For some reason, that one's got me just.
You know what?
stumped.
It's a question that nobody really thinks about. That's why I love it. I'm actually thinking I'm going to add that one to my regular routine of these questions, just because.
Well, what's your answer to that question?
My answer? I make one hell of a good cup of coffee.
Okay.
That's my thing. Lots of shit that I love to do, but like mundane shit, my coffee is always best. I don't give a shit.
There you go.
All right. Then I think the final most important question that I'm going to ask you on this: where can people find you and your work?
So they can find me. I'm on Facebook under Sam Harding, or I think Sam Harding Books is the handle part of it. I don't use Facebook a whole lot. I'm mostly on Instagram, which is under Sam Harding Writes. And then I also have a Threads. I just started Threads, which I'm not so sure about Threads. I haven't figured the algorithm out yet, because I noticed some people post weird stuff and get so much interactions, and other people, I don't know what the secret is.
We'll talk about that and off the record. I got you.
Okay, so yeah, I just started Threads. That's also under Sam Harding Writes. And then my writer's email is samhardingwrites@outlook.com. And then as far as my books, I self-published it all on Amazon. I haven't branched out to other ones yet. I probably will, but Amazon is where you can find my stuff at.
Absolutely excellent. Sam, this has been incredible. You are an amazingly intriguing individual, and I'm going to have you back on because I just want to get to know you more. For everyone else listening, if you're intrigued by these stories and want to learn more, join the Creative Coffee Cafe or our Patreon to hear Off the Record, which we are going to be jumping into right away. Not only will you get all of the off-record chats, but a whole bunch of the other new shows and shit that I'm going to be creating and putting out there. It's going to be so much fun. Sam, I just need you to say goodbye to everyone.
All right, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, everyone. Thank you.